I see thumbs up. Okay, where recording is going. So welcome back, you guys. Yay, it's Friday again, and I get to hang out with my favorite crew for an hour. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we thought we may dig into principle number 10, because I'm with you, Hope. What are the lessons that we're learning, and how do we carry them forward? Because we are the leaders, and this is all about us and our aging, and how do we want to experience that as we move through life. So we thought we'd kind of focus in on principle number 10 and take that and move forward with that. But I want to just like give you space. Is there any like burning issues you guys have, things that you're struggling with right now that you'd like to just like get out into the conversation right away around this whole loneliness, helplessness, and boredom and COVID and what that's all been like? Go, Hope.
Well, I haven't been on the calls because I've been with the hospital on Fridays.
Oh yeah.
So with the Oasis program. And so, but now I've been called back in the midst of, just everything that's happening with the marches, et cetera. My CEO called me on Friday night and asked me to reach out to team members within the organization to try to figure out how do we incorporate that into our person-directed care and really the sensitivity training and cultural awareness, et cetera. And I have to say I'm having a tough time with it. I've reached out to a couple of people that are really excited about it. And then I've reached out to some that are like, shut it down, it's going to be too disruptive. And I don't know how to balance that. Because I think that we can definitely bring education through trauma-informed care and through eating alternative. But I just don't think that's enough. And I just wanted to hear from others if you've experienced anything with, your groups, your communities, because we do have unintentional systematic racism in healthcare. I mean, we have people that are our care partners that are Black and brown majority. I know in our homes out here in Denver, that's the way it is. And what does that look like for them in this time? I mean, just coming off COVID, now experiencing this, and and how do we support them? So I am struggling with that.
Yeah, because it's another stressor on top of the stressor we already had, on top of the stressor we already had, and everything is just amplified. So I get why it must feel overwhelming to try to address that. Anybody else like kind of beefing up any of that, Evie?
I just want to add to what you said, Hope. I think that we're starting to see an uptick in COVID again. Okay,
yes.
So now we have double whammy or triple, quadruple. Now it's exploding. I saw a map of the country this morning on the news, and it's not looking good. So, I mean, we have to address all of these issues because COVID's going to take priority, but we can't allow the cultural issue to backslide on any issue on any level. We have to stay on top of this because they're all intertwined.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's that connectivity, and how do we provide a safe space for all and hear what people are saying. It's an interesting time. It's definitely a time of learning and growth. And how do we maintain the capacity to be open to that when we're all so fatigued?
Oh, absolutely. And then you look at when you add the pandemic into it, the data is showing that people of color are actually having a higher infection rate and a slower recovery rate. And that's not good either. And that's just a really interesting twist to how this infection is going. And learning circles aren't quite so, I mean, that would be our typical thing. Set people down, have some learning circles. What would be the topics you would discuss and how would you do that? But with the distancing, the learning circles aren't quite the same as they were before either. So is anybody holding learning circles? How's that working with the appropriate distancing, and anybody doing any of that yet?
We have not. It's enough to keep the huddles going and have the staff the 6 to 8 feet apart. So, there may be some discussion in a huddle, but not like we used to.
Okay. Well, and you can run a huddle like a learning circle. So how many people typically, Meredith, are you able to get in and have that distancing and still have people be able to hear each other? You're muted, Meredith.
There you go. We do it by each neighborhood, and so there's probably 8 to 10 people in a big standing circle. So, you know, it could be done, but it's usually give me the info and let me get out to work. So we are going to struggle getting back to some of the culture that we had before all of this, because it's so very medically focused right now.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it's very clinical right now. And it's hard to bring in that connectivity because everybody's in triage still.
Wow. Wow. All right, well then maybe Principle 10 is a good topic to talk about today, because Principle 10 says that wise leadership is the lifeblood of any struggle against the three plagues, and for it there can be no substitute. So what's working and what's not working so well about leadership right these days, and what kind of styles are being employed that are working, need to be employed that would work better? What are you guys thinking about leadership these days as we try to combat plagues?
I'm going to talk about, you were talking about learning circles. So we have a group, an Eden group here, we're called the Helping Stones. So we finally met this past Wednesday out in our courtyard. And we talked about the 10 principles, and our soil warmer was how has COVID impacted our 10 principles. So each person chose a principle and talked about the impact and how we are meeting or living by that principle and how we are not due to COVID. And so we thought that was a great thing to do, because it brought up a huge discussion on we're fatigued and we are so tired of CDC calling the shots and taken from our neighbors. They've taken so much, and how our neighbors haven't had a voice in the changes that have been made. It's every principle has been affected. And so we are gonna begin using this as a tool for soil warmers and education around COVID, because, you know, we are highly engaged with the Eden Alternative and not take it away. And when we are dealing with trauma and such. So we were happy to meet out in the courtyard, social distancing, and we're going to have a department meeting Monday, and we are going to use this for education and a soil warmer. And we felt this really led to some interesting conversation. So yeah, and our leadership and Principle 10, wise leadership, it's our leadership here and doing everything we can to keep the neighbors engaged and meeting the 10 principles and knowing what's important to them. And guidelines from CDC is like, we're over it, but yeah, it's there. We're still, we're moving on with not the new normal, but the next normal per se. So yeah, we're tired, but it's still here, and we still are we're still gonna fight and still have our principles. You know, COVID is naughty, so naughty.
Like that, COVID is naughty.
It's so naughty.
It is naughty.
It is. Thank you. Thank you for meeting. I'm so glad the Helping Stones met. I know them, yay. And wow, that honest assessment of how are we doing with the 10 principles. Where did that go? Yeah. Very cool. And that's where wise leadership comes in, because wise leadership keeps the principles that drive decision-making in place, even in the face of naughty COVID-19.
It's naughty. It's so naughty.
Oh my gosh. Anybody else? What are you seeing about leadership styles that work, that don't work?
Hi there.
Hi.
I noticed that we've been having a lot of compassionate leadership and very hands-on. The leadership has been on the floor. We've worked hand in hand and gave some relief and didn't put all the pressures on the care partners that are closest to the elders, and showing up and doing, you know, making sure that the staff was cared for and was getting some stress relief, which in turn would help the elders, because then their care partners aren't as stressed and they felt valued. So they felt important because a weekend or an off shift, there was the administrator, there was the quality assurance was running a card on a midnight shift, you know, because we just didn't have the staff to do it, and that they were willing to get out of their comfort zone. And, you know, though our administrator's quite comfortable being very compassionate and close to everyone. But even then, just coming in the off shifts, coming in on the weekends, saying, I'm here with you. So I think that compassion and it led by example for, you know, kind of to remind them to what the elders must be going through with, if we're stressed, then how is that lending to them? Because being so close to them, they are sensitive to how we're feeling, and then they can't do anything. So then they're not able to care for us as we once did. It was, you know, more of a simpatico. And now I'm seeing that some of our, you know, like we were in isolation everywhere. Now we're just isolated in one area and everywhere else is quarantined. So there's less restrictions, and we have our open courtyard and watching the care partners go out there together and with the elders. And so I'm noticing that they're able to relax a little bit more. So that's been what we've been doing here.
Nice, nice. Well, give them all high fives for me. Virtually, I mean, from a distance, but yay. I love it. I love it. Go Star.
I've had a very interesting week. Last week when we met, I expressed my frustration with the continued lockdown. Well, unfortunately, Monday, one of our office people, which our office building is totally separate from the nursing home, but after she came to work, she got a call from her son that his girlfriend had just tested positive for COVID. So we'd just gotten out of our half of our building isolated and everybody staying in their rooms. And I was at a point of just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. This is too painful. And I voiced that, and I was given good advice from Jack and Evie. And, you know, I said, hey, you know, you gotta get your voice out there. And I thought, yeah, my voice has been way too quiet. And so Tuesday, even though we had this thing going on in the office, which is the office I work in, I sat in on the Zoom meeting. I was the only person with a camera.
Wow.
So I was watching myself on this Zoom meeting. It was kind of hilarious. But anyway, it was with the county health officer and a bunch of other important dignitaries, and also a bunch of our other health facilities in the valley. And when it became an appropriate time, I asked to speak and was granted that, and was telling them, I don't think you realize what this is doing to our people, because after this Monday thing, they told us we had to go back to phase 1, and that meant our people had to stay in their rooms and they could only come out if they had to. And I have these two ladies I think I talked about last week that were about ready to strangle each other because they are good friends, but it's not good when they have to stay in their room 24/7 because they depend on each other getting out of the room and going doing other things. And the one lady loves to sit in the sun, and she wasn't allowed to go outside. And so I spoke my piece, and I also said I had a really good plan for no contact visitation. And the health officer said, well, get us your plan and we'll take a look at it and see if we agree. And so, you know, we've got this plan going. It's not approved yet, but I thought it was interesting. On Wednesday, all of a sudden, they let this lady who loves to sit in the sun out into our courtyard. She was out of her room. And they said, oh, we can only have one person in the courtyard at a time, which makes no sense because it's a big courtyard. And then yesterday, I was walking to my car, and the lady who loves to sit in the sun was out on the west side of our building. We have these really wonderful little picnic tables that have umbrellas, and she was sitting in her normal spot, and I was so excited to see her. So you know, we have to have all our doors locked. So we have this one lady who became the door person. She sits at the door. They even made a little name tag for her as the door person. And she sits at the door, and she's very discriminating about who she lets in the building. She makes sure they're supposed to be in there, and she opens the door for the staff because it's such a pain having the door locked and having to knock on the window to get somebody or push the doorbell to get somebody to come let you in. Well, she sits there and she loves that job. It has given her meaning. So, you know, it's good to see those things coming back. And it seems like since I stated my fear that we were getting in serious trouble with keeping our people in their rooms all the time, all of a sudden things have relaxed. And it wasn't that our administrator and our director of nurses, they were saying the same things I was saying, but it just didn't quite. So I think it goes into the leadership thing. And so it ties in well with Principle 10, and I'm just excited that we're not so heavily guarding everyone at this point. We're still keeping them safe. But anyway, that's my good news for today.
Yes, and I hope the lady in the business office doesn't get it, or if she does, it goes very smoothly and she's done.
Well, she did test positive because we tested her on Monday. But the rest of us have all been negative. So we're hoping that the masks and everything have cut it off at the pass, and that, you know, it won't go any further than that. Of course, she's not working. She's home. Right. And it seems like all the COVID that we've experienced this far has come from places outside of us. So it just underscores the importance. And Jackie, I just take my hat off to you once again, because all of you staying there, you really minimized the risks of people going out and going to a party where you know there's someone who has COVID. That's really smart, isn't it? But anyway, you know, you take that risk away. So you guys are awesome. I think it's wonderful what you've done. Have you been able to return to your home at this point? Because I know the 12th was your cutoff date. Has that been moved?
I'm going home tomorrow.
All right, wonderful.
Yeah, I go home tomorrow, and we have some pretty extensive plans in place for employees returning to work. Tomorrow, they have to bring a negative COVID screen with them. Everybody's going to be required to wear masks. They're going to be sprayed with a skin safe and fabric safe disinfectant. And then I bought bins for them so they can wear street clothes in, so they can come. I don't care if they come in their pajamas. But then in our adult day program, we have a room. It's our nap room, but there's like 8 private rooms in there, so they can use those rooms to change into their work clothes. They're going to be required to change into those work clothes before they enter the household. And then when they come out, I'm going to provide them with bags to take their dirty clothes home. They have to leave work shoes here that we'll be disinfecting. And in that room also is a shower. So if staff wants to shower after their shift, they can put their clothes back on and leave. And we're also, you know, we're screening for temperatures. So we're really, so they also have to sign a contract with us when they come back stating that they will not attend parties. They will not, you know, they practice vigilance when they're out in the community, you know, practice social distancing, good hand washing, wearing a mask, to reduce the opportunity of COVID to get in here, because we're still COVID free. So.
Wow, you guys
Well,
are really thinking it through.
We're COVID free, but we've had some people in our midst that have tested positive, asymptomatic, but that's still, it's scary because that means it was close. And so, phew, dodging that bullet, and hopefully no more bullets come, but it's so frightening to think how vulnerable we are with this. So I just, I'm holding my breath. I still think what you've done is wonderful. And one of these days, I'm going to come visit you.
Yay! We'd love all of you to visit us after COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, you had an interesting comment in the chat box. I don't know if you want to state it out loud. He's on mute. He said, we've had some folks tell us that if they had known that they would be on lockdown for this long, they would have taken their chances that they wouldn't have contracted COVID. So.
Hi, Denise. Sorry about that. I had somebody step into my office. Yeah, yeah, where do you start, right? Based on the local, you know, the CDC recommendations to kind of follow the guidance of the local state or the local health departments and emotionally the local emergency response, what we've done, you can stay if you want. What we've done is our county has gone green as of last Friday. And so as best we can figure, we'll be able to partially start to reopen on July 3rd. So we are looking forward to that. Now we do have secure courtyards and we do have opportunities to take folks outside, like individually one at a time, like some other folks had talked about. So we have started doing that. We did get specific permission from our State Department of Health. I'm in Pennsylvania, by the way. We did get specific permission from the Pennsylvania Department of Health to start allowing safe window visits because we didn't want people kind of trudging through mulch and grass and things like that to get the windows and violating privacy and HIPAA and all that goes with that. So we set up some stations on our different communities where we're doing scheduled family visits through the window now. We started that the beginning of June, maybe shortly after the beginning of June. And I mean, that's really gone well. We have schedules booked solid pretty much every day up into the evening and all weekend. So you know, the families and our folks are really appreciating that. But we have had some folks make the comment that had they known this was going to go the way it's gone, they would have been willing probably to take their chances that they would survive it if they got it, which I think is making a real statement. And I think just again, based on Principle 10, in terms of leadership, I think we've been thrust into a situation where we've had to kind of reclaim some of that maternalistic and paternalistic leadership, which is unfortunate. And I think that, again, and this may have been said, I was distracted, and if it was, I apologize, but I think one of the real kind of travesties of this is, did anybody ask the residents what they wanted?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do apologize. I had to miss last week, but I'm glad I'm back, and I do get a lot out of this. So thanks again for everything.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you bringing it back to leadership because, yeah, we have been kind of pushed to be the leaders we don't necessarily want to be. And that's got to be uncomfortable, don't you think? I think it must be uncomfortable.
I think it's very uncomfortable because, again, you know, we've made some significant strides with moving away from the institutional model and all that goes with that. And suddenly we're again finding ourselves telling the 95-year-old dignified lady entrusted to our care what she can and can't do, and when she can do it, when she can't do it, and how, where, why, and for what reason. It's very awkward. And so we're just, again, that's kind of our struggle is, I think we've done fairly well with meaningful engagement while they're in their rooms, but seriously, and I mean, again, the balancing act is, how do you reopen in a manner that's safe for everybody, while at the same time honoring personhood and individuality and individual choice and preference? It's been a real challenge.
I appreciate you sharing, Brad. I cannot imagine, but I appreciate what you're saying. Anybody else? Thoughts about leadership and what's had to shift and how you feel about that? And are you learning anything? Like, if we do get a resurgence, are you going to do things differently as leaders?
Denise, it's Star. I definitely will speak up much sooner. I sat back and allowed the people who were in the front lines, because I wasn't right there, and I was trying to minimize the chances of things coming in. So I was letting them do their best, and I know they spoke well, but I think I have really learned that sometimes it takes another voice to come in and say, hey, we can't continue like this. You've got to help us. You've got to, be more reasonable. Locking our people up is creating more problems than it's solving. And when I actually said that, then things started turning, and I should have known that all along. I mean, I don't have this white stuff on my head because I was born yesterday, but it's just, I think I tend to be a little bit more timid, and I don't want to just come in and take over. I want people to do what they're supposed to be doing, and but I learned that once I spoke, things changed miraculously. It just took a couple of days, and all of a sudden we weren't being told, oh no, they have to stay in their rooms, then if they come out they have to wear a mask. Well, some of our people, we have one lady, no way is she going to wear a mask. So a few weeks ago, you asked the question, what have you learned? Well, I was very quiet that week. I couldn't say what I had learned. I have learned now that speaking up is important, and especially when you see things not going the right direction.
Thank you.
So, if I may say something, there's a lot to unpack in there, right? Because we're talking about individual liberty, choice versus, the common good. So you have very hard stories that you're telling. In my state, in New Jersey, the nursing home next to me, a VA home, lost 72 residents because they didn't take appropriate precautions. So, hindsight, hopefully what we've learned is what works or doesn't work. And in the beginning, it's very hard to, make choices when you don't know what the virus is going to do or not to do.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, yes, I think you have to talk. What I've learned, having lived through several crises in New York over the last 30 years, is that when there's big chaos, people listen to whoever makes sense. And so you should never be afraid to share what's on your mind, because when all the markers are gone, people are going to rely on their own understanding of things. And if what you propose makes sense, it will be accepted. That's leadership. When there's chaos, someone stands up and says something that resonates with people, and people follow. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Pascal. I love it. I love it. Anybody else? Thoughts on leadership? What are you learning about leadership? What have you seen people step up and be leaders that you weren't expecting to step up and be leaders? Go, Evie.
So I just want to say that, in my experience, for many years, I was a culture change educator and consultant. And so I went into homes, and wise leadership is the most important factor. And I used to say to people, if the leaders appoint a few people to try to make this happen, person-directed care and cultural sensitivity, if the leaders direct people to make this happen, then they are not doing their job. And I would actually advise staff, if you do not have a leader who is fully invested, then you don't have a leader, number one. But if they're not fully invested, go get another job where they are invested. And people say, I love the residents, I can't do that. And I said, there's residents everywhere that need your love. But you can't be a single voice in this very complex world trying to make this happen. But it has to be driven by leadership. And they set the stage and the example at every level. So if those of you who aren't answering, it's because you don't have wise leadership, or you don't have the opportunity to be the wise leader you are, then you need to go somewhere where you can.
But we don't want anybody quitting their job right now.
Well, maybe you have to, and go to a place where you can be really effective and affect change. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I'm really tough on this one, because if you're miserable, then that affects the residents. If you're not living up to your potential because an organization doesn't allow you to, then nobody is being served. Sorry, this is one of my passionate soapboxes. Can't help it. Hope knows me well. We shared an office.
I've been in that boat, Evie, and I did sail away, so I get it.
I love it.
I think one of the things that we're finding is that it's been, while we were doing so well on our journey related to what we wanted our culture to be, and this came in and told us, this is how you will be, that we have found people are willing to just back into the, you tell me what to do. And so gently now we're leading them back out to the, what do you want to do? What should we do on this neighborhood? How should we affect this change? How can we do this? So we're kind of we're leading by having to pull them back into independence again. And we're just now starting to be able to do communal dining again, and having the eye opener of, it's going to be different. It's not going to be big rooms with many tables with many people. How can we do it now? And so people are starting to think, but still wanting to be told what to do. So we're kind of, come on back again.
Isn't it fascinating just how fast our heads go back to the old ways, even though you guys have been on the journey for years, and just this kind of thing comes up and like, vroom, we go right back into that old mind thing. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think, Denise, it's because it's just that sense of survival. Like, how do we survive? And when you go into that, that's when you have that systematic, I need to do this, 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 and this, and that task orientation to keep everybody safe. And so we don't have that mind, heart, body connection. We become very robotic. And that's tough. That's really tough, because people lose that sense of purpose and meaning, and we're not thinking creatively. And it puts us back in that box.
On the other hand, Hope, I've seen a lot of people doing very creative things. The hallway bingo, trying to keep some semblance of normalcy. But what Pascal said was, he's right next door to a place that lost 75 elders. Now, none of us want to be that place that loses that kind of population to a virus. None of us want that. So we were kind of forced into taking this very seriously. I know when it first started, I was like, oh, you know, it's a virus. It's like the flu. It's not going to be that bad. But then when everybody started saying, oh, no, this is far worse, and this is this, and this is that, then you go, well, wait a second. These people know something that I don't. I need to listen to them, and I need to follow their advice. Well, that was fine for a while, but you do come to a point where you go, wait a second, this is getting too heavy. I can't bear this anymore. I have to speak up. So I think that it's really hard when you find yourself. Just the other day, I was getting ready to leave work, and I was driving on the driveway, and I had this thought go through my head. You know, everything has changed so much. The lady who loves to sit in the sun, she loves to go to the Moose Lodge the first Monday of the month to a dance. She can't dance because she doesn't have the use of her left side, and so dancing is not possible. But I've taken her to that dance, and I had this sadness wash over me, thinking, oh no, will we ever be able to dance again? And those kinds of things. I mean, that's the reality of this. How far is it going to go? How much is going to change in our lives? And we don't really have the answer to those questions yet. But I think it's important that we do have safety in mind, but I just, I want to say again, I've heard wonderful things that you're all doing to try to keep things as normal as possible, and keep the elders doing things, not just sitting in their rooms twiddling their thumbs. So give yourself some credit for that. I think it's important.
Yay.
And I hate to talk again, Denise, but Star, you got my creative juices going. So you can, you know, when you said the dancing, I was like, well, you can dance anywhere. Let's, you know, dance anywhere. And how are we shining the light? Those are the leaders, right? Those people that were able to maintain that creativity, maintain that space, and keep going through this. How are we shining the light on them and their actions on being able to navigate these really tough waters? And then on that other side, the communities that have really struggled with loss, how are we supporting them with that grieving process and that recovery? Because we're getting to that place. And has any homes kind of started to conceptualize that? Any communities and what that might look like?
Now, Hope, you've got my creative juices going. I was just thinking, wait a second, what if all of us that are lucky to have been in COVID-free homes, even though we've been isolated and had all those things happen because we had some people who were asymptomatic that tested positive, what if we started a campaign to reach out to those places that have been so severely impacted and let them know that we support them and we think they are awesome, and if they need anyone to talk to, we're there for them. Something like that. I just think maybe it would be nice to show that kind of support.
Yep. They certainly aren't getting it through the media at all. And
No.
yeah, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way the things fell for them, darn it. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, Denise. I like to cast fault on the media.
Okay.
Because I think that there's so many positive stories that need to be shared. And I've often said that the burden of care for individuals that are living in nursing homes is not just the responsibility of the nursing home. We have a community at large, we have counties, we have states, and we all need to bridge together to care for our state's most vulnerable.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice.
they get a lot of burden and a lot of regulations in comparison to other systems, and they navigate those things so well and try to do the best that they can. And I think that, yeah, I want to see the phoenix rising from the ashes.
Yes. I'm with you. And I don't know how we make that happen, but I think it takes leadership to do it. Very cool. If you had it to do over again, which you may very well have the chance to do it over again, what have you learned about leadership and how to effectively lead people through this time? What are the lessons learned you want to carry forward? What would you do differently?
I'd speak up sooner, but that's only because I can see from where we came to where we got and how frustrated I became, but it's only because I've experienced that. I didn't know where we were going, where it was going to take us, what was going to happen. And I sat back and I listened and I read, and I became so absorbed in learning, okay, what is this, that it took time for me to finally say, okay, I feel confident in saying, hey, come on, we've got a way people can visit, and it's totally 100% bulletproof safe. So let us do it, please. And so I think it takes time to get there. You can't just go against what everybody's saying and saying, oh, I know better. It takes time to learn what you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a very steep learning curve. Very steep.
Hey, Denise, I want to wrap back around on some of the things that are in the chat box about the mandatory testing.
Please.
So we have a community ethics committee that is held at Vivage, and it has all of our ombudsmen, it has state representation, it has legal, and this has been our topic last month and this month. And so we have the important players. I don't know if it's going to make change because that's coming from CMS, but it really, it's a tough one. It's a really tough one, the mandatory testing. So from what we're experiencing, I would just say try to have all the key players, kind of like what STAR did with, getting people at the table to say, hey, is this right, proper, and good? And how can we navigate these waters and keep people safe at the same time without mandatory testing? It's a tough one. Encourage the continued discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Hope. And this is Chris. Hi, everybody. I know I'm not on camera today. You wouldn't want to see me, believe me. This came from a place in Ithaca, New York I was just talking to, and they're just really, really struggling. They're COVID-free, and they said, why can't we're testing our employees, but it was really more about the people that live there, and why can't we have a little more control over that, because it is so invasive. Even their employee care partners, people are crying, and so they're just trying to figure out some kind of way to act with legislature or come forward. So I just didn't know if you had any advice for her. So that's good. Thank you. To start.
Because it's pretty invasive testing. I mean, it hurts. And, being a member out in the community, members of the community don't have to get tested. And I know that our situation is a bit different because this has affected many people within skilled nursing. But there has to be a way to show that we're doing the appropriate precautions to reduce the need for the mandatory testing.
We are able to test, and I say able because nobody has had a problem with it, staff and residents, every 2 weeks. And as long as we can show that 2 or 3 of those testings, then we're going to be able to open up to in-house visits and not keep them to courtyard or outdoor visits. So residents and staff alike, everybody is, all of the partners involved have been very open to all of the testing. We've had family members that wish they could be tested to show that they can be safe to come in. And we are toying with that idea, but it has not been throughout the state of North Dakota, just the nursing homes.
in our county, Napa County in California, they're aggressively testing everyone. So you can go whether you have symptoms or not and be tested. And when we had our 2 employees test positive asymptomatically, they started testing all of the nursing facilities, all of assisted living. And I will say I have experienced a variety of tests. Some are much harder than others. I had one test where the Q-tip went in and turned a corner and felt like it was touching my brain. And that one wasn't as comfortable as the one we're doing now, which now the health department has provided us the test, and we do our own tests to the point where you can take the Q-tip and put it in till you feel resistance, twirl it 3 times, and then do the other nostril. And, you know, it's kind of tickly, uncomfortable, but it's not extremely painful. It's just, it makes your nose for the next 20, 30 minutes feel like something's invaded it. So our elders have been able to tolerate the test, and now we're to a point where, I mean, we all had to be tested for several weeks. Now we have to test 25% of all of our people every week. And then if that continues to go well, they will open this up more. They have opened us up a bit to where people are able to go to the courtyard, people are able to go outside the building. And so, you know, I'm all for testing, and if it will take us down the road to a better place.
I'm hearing from Star and Meredith that it's the why that's helping you get past that. If people understand the purpose, that maybe that's helping a little. Okay, right. Anybody else? What are you doing about testing, and how are you helping people get through that process?
So we are able to test on campus as well. Our infection control nurse tests everyone here. Like, she'll go over to the assisted living, the Pines, and test the elders and team members. And then if it's going to be an isolated situation, she'll meet them somewhere here on campus and test a team member. So right now, we weren't able to do that in the beginning, but now we are. And I believe what's coming down soon is we may be getting tested on a regular basis. And some of the neighbors have refused, so they bring other team members who have a great connection with them and have been able to get testing done with a team member that a neighbor has been very close to or has a great connection with. So yeah, it's Star, I was listening to you when you said your first test. Yeah, I thought they were going to take some of my brain out, and I kicked, and I had a headache the rest of the day, and it was like just awful. It was just the worst feeling, you know, when you get water up your nose. It was that times 100, and it just really hurt. And a lot of us on that day that had to be tested were very uncomfortable with that procedure. So now I'm hearing there's an easier one that's not going to clear up into your sinus cavity. So yeah.
We use the throat one, and it just tickles the back of your throat. One of the nurses told me, if you don't gag, I'm not doing it right. So it's right before you gag, and then they've got enough. So the throat is much easier.
Good to know.
The time they did the one that went back into what I thought was my brain.
Yeah.
They also did the throat, Meredith, and I said to the nurse that was doing it, was our nurse practitioner, and I said, well, you accomplished your goal, because she did make me gag. So, you know, then I got the nose thing, and only one nostril. They didn't do both, fortunately, but it's still, you know, I would hate it if an elder had to experience that. But I think they've improved the testing, and it seems to be working fine. So time will tell.
I think people are pretty fearful of doing it, also because, you know, what if you do have positive cases, and are you going to be in perpetual lockdown for the whole, you know, months on end? And I think that's the big, we have communities that have had outbreaks, and we're able to contain them, thankfully. But the fear of testing is that, oh, what if all of the, you know, it takes only 1 or 2 people to test positive, and we have to lock down everything. And so that's one of the concerns that I'm hearing about it, is we have a community that has been literally locked down for months because they are doing, the county there mandated testing. And so they're doing weekly testing. And every time somebody is positive, even if they actually were positive months ago and they come up positive again, you know, they have to isolate.
Wow.
Well, I've heard that sometimes people don't get cancer testing done because they're afraid that if they have cancer, it's all over. Well, I can't wrap my head around that, because yes, you might be isolated, but the other option is you don't know and you continue to spread. So there's, you know, other ways of looking at it. I think you have to be careful that you're not so afraid that, you know, if you test positive, you're going to be put in isolation. I'd much rather do that and sacrifice my freedom to try to stop this bug from doing its dirty deed. So that's the way I feel.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because I think people have very diverse perspectives and very different risk tolerances. And that includes everybody that lives in the community as well as that comes to work there. And trying to negotiate that's got to be really tough. As a leader, it takes wise leadership to figure out how do you negotiate that and work your way through that, and engagement and conversation and all the things we've been talking about today. So we're not doing it to people, we're doing it with them. Wow. 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 All right, Jenny, you had something really cool. We haven't heard from you yet today, so I want to hear from you once before we go. Is that okay?
Yes. I apologize. I'm sitting in my hammock and they're mowing. So if it gets loud, that's why I'm not talking. What did you want me to talk about, Denise?
Well, you had posted something, not about the red, yellow, green. You said, yeah, the quiet leaders emerging.
Yeah. So we have these values that we talk about each month, or what our principles are. And this month happened to be about meaningful engagement, which as a life engagement specialist during this time felt a little like a knife to the heart. Not that we're not making those happen, but we were talking about it in a staff meeting, and all of a sudden these people were coming out of the woodwork that we never knew had something to contribute, and almost took this crisis for them to want to step up or to offer their gifts. And so one was a housekeeper. He's from Nepal. He's been with us since day one, and he is just a quiet, head down, gets his work done, but you catch him in those special moments with an elder, but he doesn't want you to see, like when he hands someone the vacuum and lets them vacuum, or he makes a bed with someone. But anyways, he came and talked to me about how where he grew up in Nepal, that the men would gather together and cut each other's hair. That was sort of their social tradition. And so never did I know that Krishna had this ability, but boy, do my men need it. So we opened up the salon, and Krishna was giving the most incredible haircuts I've ever seen with a pair of like regular old scissors. A little dicey. And my executive director was had brought in aftershave and a really good razor and was giving hot shaves. And I was running the Dremel on their toenails because the podiatrist hasn't been in 100 days. And anyways, it was really cool to see who you would think of as the formal leader, the ED, humbled in that way. And then to see someone who you would think as very humble, rising to really meet that need. So it was just beautiful and something to be celebrated.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, we have 1 more minute to go. I want to thank you guys for your time and attention today, and just something I want you to ponder for next week, because we have 2 more weeks that we have planned to meet, and then I don't know what happens after that. So just be thinking about, are these weekly gatherings really working for you? Do we want to continue weekly? Do we want to go to every other week, once a month? We have options, choices. You have autonomy. So just be thinking about, where do we go next? And we can start plotting and planning a little bit next week as well. Any other closing comments before we sign out? All right. Well, thank you all for your sharing today. I've learned a lot about leadership. It's been awesome. So thank you, and take care, and we'll see you next week. Yay!
Bye, everyone.
Bye.